So the discussion is on water potential today. This term water potential was coined by Slater and Taylor in 1960, and this is a term actually replacing the DPD, the diffusion pressure deficit term has been replaced nowadays by this water potential value. And you know what is meant by diffusion pressure deficit? That is difference in the diffusion pressure value of a solution compared to with its solvent. That is, solution is compared with the solvent, and thereby actual concentration of the solution is expressed by using the DPD. But nowadays, it is expressed by this term water potential, and which was for the first time used by Slater and Taylor. And what mean by this? The spontaneous movement of water from one region to the another region is explained by the free energy of water. Means every component of a system possesses a free energy. And because of this free energy, they are able to do work. Means they are able to move freely. And this free energy is also called as a kinetic energy. And thereby what we can understand is because of the free energy, the molecules are always in a constant motion or they are in a random motion. And thereby tend to move from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. If we look at a pure water is considered to be having a maximum free energy than the water molecules present in the solution that we have discussed while discussing about the DPD term. Because in a solution, as there is a solute, the freedom of movement of the solvent is reduced due to the collision. Thereby we can say there is a maximum free energy in pure water compared to the water molecules present in the solution. And this difference is called as a water potential. Same way as DPT term, where the solution is compared with its solvent, and here also the solution is compared with its solvent. And actually, when there is a free energy for a particular molecule of any substance, that is called as chemical potential of that chemical. That's called as a chemical potential. Similarly, the water is also having its own chemical potential. And the chemical potential of water is called as a water potential. I hope you have understood this. For any molecules of a substance, there is a chemical potential. And because of this chemical potential, what happens? There is a molecules possesses a free energy, and because of that, we can able to observe the molecules will having a chemical potential. But chemical potential of water is called as a water potential, like that. The chemical potential is always expressed in the form of a Greek word that is psi, in the form of a Greek word psi. Thereby, it is considered, arbitrarily it is considered that water potential of pure water is maximum and it is considered as zero. Understood? That is, water molecule possesses free energy and that free energy of pure water is greater than the free energy of other solutions prepared in water. So thus, arbitrarily, the water potential value of pure water is considered as zero. Okay, that is considered as a zero parts. They expressed in parts. Thereby, what happens? The presence of a solutes in the solution reduces the free energy of water, and thereby, what happens? Reduces the water potential value of that solution. Thus, water potential of a solution is always less than zero, or in other words, it is called as of negative value. I hope you have understood this. Pure water is having a maximum water potential value, which is considered arbitrarily as zero. But the water molecules present in the solution will always have a lesser water potential value than the pure water, and thereby what happens, the value goes on lesser than zero, or it becomes negative. So thereby we can define a water potential as the difference between the free energy of water molecules in pure water and the free energy of water in a solution. That means we are considering the cell, and that's why the free energy of water in a cell sample. So that's why the difference between the free energy of water molecules in pure water and the free energy of water molecules in any other system is called as a water potential. So now we will study this water potential will depend on the different components when we are considering it with a cell. So our discussion is restricted to the cell sap, and that's why the water potential value of the cell sap is concerned with three components. And what are those three components? One is metric potential, another is solute potential, and the third one is pressure potential. It means whenever we are considering the water potential value of a cell, we have to consider these three components: the metric potential, solute potential, and the pressure potential. Now let us discuss what is meant by this metric potential. Metric potential means it is the term used for the surface to which the water molecules are adsorbed. Now we have seen the structure of the cell. The cell is having the cell membrane, tonoplast, and also within that protoplasm there are number of hydrophilic molecules. And these hydrophilic molecules attract the water molecule, and thereby water molecule is adsorbed to this hydrophilic substances. They are adsorbed, remember that, adsorbed. Thereby what happens? Free energy of water molecule is reduced, because they are attracted by these hydrophilic substances, and thereby freedom of movement of the water molecule in the cell sap is reduced. That's why we have to consider the metric potential value. That means metric potential is the component of a water potential influenced by the presence of metrics. Metrics. What are those metrics? If it is in the soil, it is soil particles, which is adsorbed with the water molecule. And within the cell, we can able to observe all these hydrophilic substances, that is carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, which are they are hydrophilic molecules. So thereby, in a plant system, we can say this metric potential value is considered as a negligible. Okay, it is considered to be as a negligible amount, and therefore we can express water potential value as psi s psi plus psi p. So here I have not added actual equation. Okay, when we have to consider three components, and when we are considering the three components, then water potential value of the cell is equal to psi m, that means metric potential, psi s is solute potential, psi p is pressure potential. But we have seen there is a metric potential value is considered to be as a negligible, and thereby water potential value of the cell is considered as equal to psi s plus psi p. That is solute potential plus pressure potential. Now coming to the second type, that is solute potential, which is also known as osmotic potential. What is this solute potential? It is defined as the amount by which the water potential is reduced due to the presence of solute. Already we have seen, when you are adding the solute to the water, the solute get dissolves in it, randomly distributes within the space, and thereby there is a collision between the solute and the solvent particles. And because of this collision between the solute and the solvent particles, the freedom of movement of the solvent particles is reduced. Means free energy of the water molecule is reduced. That is why the water present in the solution is having a lesser water potential value than the pure water. So thereby the number of solute dissolved depends on the water potential value of the cell. So thereby we can say that this water potential, solute potential value is always with a negative value because it is lesser than pure water. Or solute potential can be expressed as the decrease in chemical potential of pure water due to the presence of solute in it. So chemical potential value of the pure water is reduced or decreased because of the presence of solute in it. That amount of chemical potential value of pure water reduced due to the presence of solute is called as a solute potential. Next is pressure potential. We have already seen in the last class itself a turgor pressure. What is the turgor pressure? When there is an endosmosis, there is an expansion of protoplasm. Cell membrane is pushed towards the cell wall, and thereby a pressure is exerted on the wall. And that pressure is called as a turgor pressure. So it is, what is this turgor pressure? Turgor pressure is nothing but here it's a pressure potential. The hydrostatic pressure exerted by the protoplasm against the cell wall as a result of entry of water is called as turgor pressure. That is called as a turgor pressure, and that itself is considered as a pressure potential. And you know that pressure potential value in a plasmolized cell is 0. In a flaccid cell it is 0, but pressure potential is maximum in turgid cell when there is an endosmosis. That's why we can able to observe this pressure potential is always positive. So now question arises, why the pressure potential is always positive? You know that pressure potential direction, the turgor pressure direction is always in the outward direction. It is applied over the wall, and thereby water potential value of that water molecules also increases because in the same direction as the free energy operating in the water molecules. So thereby we can say in a partially turgid cell, we can say that is psi S plus psi P, where there is a high water potential. But in fully turgid cell, what happens? The highest water potential value will be there in a fully turgid cell, which may be somewhat 0. But in a flaccid cell or plasmolized cell, what happens? It is lowest. Water potential value is lowest because solute potential value is maximum. So thereby, we can understand now this water potential. So what is that? How it is decided? Net movement of water into the cell in a fully turgid cell, we can say. So when you consider a fully turgid cell, the movement of water into the cell stops. Already I told you yesterday, because in a fully turgid cell, there is a turgor pressure value is equal to wall pressure. Vacuole is increasing its volume to the maximum. There is no space within the cell, so thereby further entry of water into the cell is not possible. Net movement of water into the cell stops in a fully touched cell. So generally in that condition, cell will be at an equilibrium state with the water outside the medium. And thereby what happens? Water potential value will be 0. Okay. Then the cell at fully turgid condition will possess some amount of solute potential, which is also equal to the pressure potential. I understood my point. In a fully turgid cell, there is a solute potential because there is a solute present in the cell sap. And you know that this is of negative value. Solute potential value is negative, as I told you. And pressure potential value is that because turgid cell is having a maximum pressure potential. And that pressure potential value is a positive value. So solute potential value in negative, pressure potential value in positive. Means they are in opposite direction. Therefore, in a fully turgid cell, the water potential will be 0. Water potential value will be 0. How? For example, if psi p, pressure potential of a cell is 5 bars and solute potential value is minus 5 bars, then we can able to observe that is psi cell is equal to psi s plus psi p, and psi cell is equal to, that is solute potential value is minus 5, pressure potential value is plus 5, and the value becomes 0. So this is possible in a turgid cell. But if you come to the flaccid cell, what happens? In a flaccid cell, turgor pressure becomes 0, or pressure potential value becomes 0. Then what happens? The psi cell, water potential of the cell becomes equals to solute potential because pressure potential value is 0. So as 0 turgor present in the flaccid cell, osmotic potential becomes equal to the water potential value. Osmotic potential means it is a solute potential becomes equal to water potential of the cell. So why, if in a flaccid cell we can see osmotic potential value will be minus bars, 5 bars. Pressure potential value is 0 bars. And thereby we can say that is psi is equal to psi s plus psi p, where only solute potential value is there. Pressure potential value becomes 0. Thereby water potential value of the cell is becoming equal to solute potential value. So that is called as a negative value. So thereby we can say turgid cell will have generally 0 water potential and flaccid cells will have negative water potential values. So thereby you can understand now. For example, take the example. There are two cells. Just I will give you an idea. Cell A and cell B. Okay. Just imagine cell A and cell B. There are two cells, adjacent cells. And the cell A with a solute potential value is minus 15 bars. Just you can make a note also. Solute potential value is minus 15 bars and pressure potential value is of 10 bars. That is in cell A, where psi s is minus 15, psi p is 10. Then water potential value of the cell becomes how much? Is it minus 5 bars? Okay. Then consider the adjacent cell B. It is having a psi s value, solute potential value as minus 10 and pressure potential value as 0. Okay, psi s value is minus 10 and psi p value is 0. Then cell B will have water potential value of minus 10 bars. So cell A is having minus 5 bars and cell B is having minus 10 bars. then you can understand water moves from higher water potential to lower water potential. Which cell is having a higher water potential now? Which cell is having higher potential? A is having minus 5 bars and B is having minus 10 bars. Means cell A is having a higher water potential value because lesser negative value minus 5, and the other cell is having, B cell is having minus 10 bars. That's why water can move from A to B, cell A to B. So that is how water movement can be understood by considering the water potential value. I hope you have understood this. There may not be any much problem in understanding this water potential values. Okay. So now this is considered with the basics with regard to the understanding of other physiological functions which is taking place in the plant body. Now let us move on to the first physiological functions of the plant body as absorption of water. And you know this concept of absorption of water. Terrestrial plants have to absorb water from the soil. And this is required to maintain the turgidity of the cells, turgidity of the entire plant body. So that's why plants has to absorb more and more water. And terrestrial plants will absorb the water from the soil. And this water absorbed by the plant helps in maintaining the turgidity, and thereby normal metabolic activities and the growth can occur in the plant. So whenever we consider about the absorption of water, it is concerned to the terrestrial plants, because in aquatic plants, plants can absorb the water through the entire surface of the plant body because it is surrounded by the water. So whenever we consider absorption of water, means it is considered with the terrestrial plants with a root system, well developed root system, or absorption of water takes place through the root. But we should know that absorption of water, even though occurs through the root, but maximum amount of water absorption takes place in a specific region of the root. Specific region of the root. It is not the entire surface of the root responsible for absorption. That's why we have to understand the different regions of the root. And when you take the vertical section of the root tip, when you take the vertical section of the root tip, you can see the ultimate tip of the root is having a cap-like structure, which is a protective layer made up of dead cells, and that is called as a root cap. And you know that root cap is a protective layer because as the root grows further deep into the soil, it has to penetrate between the harder soil particles. And thereby these younger tissues present at the root tip may get damaged. So to protect these younger meristematic tissues present at the root tips, the dead layer of cap is present, which is called as a root cap. And it is followed by this zone, which is called as meristematic zone, or it is called as a zone of cell division. Zone of cell division. You know that meristematic tissues are present here, and they continuously divide and adds on the newer tissues to the older part of the root. And that is the zone called as meristematic zone, or it is also called as zone of cell division, where there is a continuous cell division. And once the cell is divided, there is a formation of daughter cells. And you know that daughter cells generally half the size of the parental cell. After division, the parental cell divides into two, and the divided daughter cell's size will be somewhat half the size of the parental cell. And those daughter cells has to increase in size. They have to elongate, they have to stretch. And that is seen just behind this meristematic region, and which is called as elongation region, or it is called as zone of elongation, and this region, and where all these daughter cells are undergoing elongation. And you can see all these behind this elongation region, we can see maturation region. And this is the region where we can see this root hairs. That's why it is called as root hair region, or it is also called as a zone of maturation, because the elongated cells from the elongation region will mature into different types of tissue. What is the different types of tissue? You know that the peripheral region of this root is having epidermis, then followed by hypodermis, then cortex, then endodermis, pericycle, centrally stellar region provided with xylem, phloem, and pith cells. So all these regions will have different types of tissues. Structurally, with shape, size, everything they are different. Means after the division, the elongated cells will mature into different types of tissue here. And that's why it's called a zone of maturation, and which is provided with the root hairs. And this root hair region is more prominent because this is the zone from where actual absorption of water takes place through these root hairs. Through these root hairs. That's why we have to consider root hair region is the actual region for absorption of water. And you have studied in the last semester anatomy of the root. Okay, there is a outermost epidermis layer, followed by hypodermis, then the cortex, followed by stellar region externally bordered by endodermis, pericycle, and then stele, where the vascular bundles are arranged in the form of a radial manner. You can see radial manner. This is the patch of xylem, you can see, and this is the patch of phloem, alternating. That is the radial vascular bundle is the characteristic feature of root. Then now let us discuss a root hair, how the root hair structurally seen. And this root hair is simply elongation of epiblema cells. Epiblema means it is the epidermis of a root. And one of this epiblema cells of root will elongate, a tubular elongation you can see. And this tubular elongations seen in this epiblema cells of the root is called as a root hair. And how this structurally root hair is? Root hair is externally bounded by cell wall, same as the plant cell structure. And then it is lined by cell membrane. Within the cell membrane, we can see the cytoplasm. So this is the cytoplasm. Okay. And inside the cytoplasm, we can see the vacuole, large vacuole. And this vacuole is even extending up to this tubular prolongation. So same structure which is prolongated. And also the other cell organelles like nucleus and all mitochondria, Golgi complex, they are all present, normal structure of the root hair. But only root hair is elongated tubular structure, which is the extension of epiblema cells. So this is what the structure of a root hair. Now, let us discuss about the sources of water. Okay, sources of water. And where we can able to observe terrestrial plants obtains the water from the soil. We have already discussed. Is that total water present in the soil is available for the plants to absorb? No, it is not possible. That's why total amount of water present in the soil is called as hollard. Hollard, H-O-L-A-R-D. I'm not mentioned in the PowerPoint. Okay, it's called as a hollard, H-O-L-A-R-D. Total amount of water present in the soil. And water available for the plants to absorb is known as cresard, C-H-R-E-S-A-R-D, cresard. Hollard is total amount of water present in the soil. Cresard is the amount of water available for the absorption to the plants. And the remaining water which is present in the soil is unable to be absorbed, cannot be absorbed by the plants. And they are called as echard. E-C-H-A-R-D, E-C-H-A-R-D, echard, which is non-available water for absorption. And actually, if the soil contains only non-available water, then the plants will wilt, and that is permanent wilting, which we can say. So that's why there must be a sufficient water available in the soil for the plants to absorb. That is the water which is of a crescent type. Crescent type. That must be there. But soil water is one of the most important constituents because this provides the medium for absorption of different nutrients also, different organic matters also from the soil. So thereby water is to be available for the plants for absorption in a sufficient manner. Then let us discuss what are the different forms of water available for the plants. First, sorry, not for the plants. What are the types of water available in the soil? Available in the soil. First one is a gravitational water. So what is this gravitational water? During rain, what happens? Certain portion of the water percolates down into the soil between the soil particles, where we can see this is the sample of a soil which has been shown. This is a soil particle, and there is a space between these soil particles. And between these soil particles, water will percolate. And when they are under percolation, they are attracted by the gravitational force, and thereby water is pulled down. It is pulled down. And because of pulling down of this water, they reaches to the deep earth crust, or that is to the water table. And then what happens? To such a great depth, roots cannot reach, or roots cannot absorb water directly from the water table. But nowadays, by mechanical forces, this groundwater is made available, gravitational water is made available by pumping the water by water pumps. That is the irrigation that has been done, and that is some amount of gravitational water can be pumped, but actual gravitational water is not available for plants to absorb. But if you observe, where this soil will have the pore size of different macropore and micropore. So macropores are seen where we can able to observe the water is pulled down greatly to the downwards, that is towards the water table, and this is the micropores. Then the second type of water is capillary water. What is this capillary water? It is the water which is retained in the soil micropores. It is retained in the soil micropores. If it is macropores, water is pulled down towards the water table by the gravitational force. But in a micropores, what happens? The pore size is lesser. That's why, because of the lesser pore size, the water is held by capillary force or by surface tension. So that water is called as a capillary water. The water held between the micropores of the soil by the capillary force is called as capillary water. And this is the water always available for the plants to absorb, the capillary water. Then the next type is hygroscopic water. What is this hygroscopic water? It is the water held by the soil particles as a thin film, as a thin film. But it is due to the adhesive force, means the soil particle adhered by the water molecules because of this adhesive force. Water is having a maximum adhesive force. That's why it binds to the soil particles. But this adhesive force is so strong that these water molecules cannot be separable from the soil by the root. So because of this maximum adhesive force, water remains binded to the soil particles, not available for the plants to absorb. Then another type of water, that is chemically combined water. It is the water which is combined chemically with the soil particles. Particularly, soil particles means there is a minerals, soil minerals, and this water is also not available for the plants. So thereby we can see during the rain water comes. There is a During the heavy rain, huge amount of water runs along the slope, and it is added onto the rivers, streams, lakes. Then it is ultimately added onto the oceans and seas. But some amount of water is percolates into the soil, and which is occurring in different form: gravitational water, capillary water, hygroscopic water, and chemically combined water. But only capillary water is actually available water for absorption, or it is called as a chrysal. You can see this diagram. It's a hygroscopic water. You can see the blue color, where we can see this blue colored line which has been seen around the soil particles. They are hygroscopic water. They are binding to the soil particles by adhesive force. This is a capillary water. You can see this capillary region. This has been filled with water, along with some amount of water, hygroscopic, but remaining water present in this capillary region, and which is available for the absorption. But gravitational water, you know that they are completely drained down. So that is what the condition. So thereby we can able to observe this gravitational water. Now let us discuss about the field capacity of the soil. So what is that field capacity? So during after heavy rainwater comes, or after heavy rain, or even irrigation, you know that water is pumped from the well or tube well or pond or whatever, and during that some amount of water is drained along the slope, as I told you, and that is called as a runaway water or runoff water, and only small amount of water is retained by the soil, and the amount of water retained by the soil is called as field capacity. That is, amount of water retained by the soil is called as a field capacity or water holding capacity of the soil. But what happens? Field capacity of the soil water content, a few days after the soil has been thoroughly wetted, and then water goes downward towards the water table because of gravitational pull. But greatly we can able to observe field capacity of soil is affected by soil profile, soil structure, temperature, because we have already seen there are micropores or macropores. But in micropores, we can see there is a maximum water holding capacity. And that is seen in particularly clay soil, you know that. Clay soil is having a maximum water holding capacity. But that clay soil is worst for aeration. Understand? It is not good for aeration. There is no soil air. But if you come to sandy soil, they are with the macropores. Water holding capacity is less in a sandy soil compared to clay soil. But there is a maximum aeration, and that sandy soil is also not suitable for plants to grow. Clay soil, even though it is containing a water, it is not good for plants growth because there is a lack of soil air. But the loamy soil, you know that another term, the loamy soil, it is best suited for the plants to grow because it can hold sufficient quantities of water, and also it can provide a good aeration. So that's why soil profile, soil structure, and also temperature decides the field capacity of that soil. So that's why field capacity is to be considered as water holding capacity. Now, the another point we have to discuss, wilting point. So now we know that as the roots with their numerous branches and millions of root hairs absorb the water, from capillary spaces. And as the water is absorbed from the capillary spaces, there is a depletion of water. But this depleted space is filled by the other regions, where the water will move from the other region. As water is absorbed by the root from a particular place, that capillary space which is depleting water is refilled. But sometimes what happens, refilling process needs some time. So suddenly it cannot be refilled or replenishable. It takes some time. And during that period, the plant experiences the deficiency of water for a shorter duration. Because after some time it is refilled. So when the plants are suffering the deficiency of water for a shorter duration, it is called as temporary wilting point. Temporary wilting point. But there are some cases where this depleted water cannot be replaced for a longer duration. And in that condition, what happens? The plant will die. And such a state is called as permanent wilting point. So thereby we have to consider the wilting point is one is temporary wilting point. If the shorter for the shorter duration, plants finds the deficiency of water, and then it is called as a temporary wilting point. And when the plants absorb the water continuously, but that absorbed water cannot be replaced in that place, capillary spaces, for a longer duration, that is called as a permanent wilting point. So these are the aspects with regard to the absorption of water. So we have discussed with the introductory part. So that is structure of the root hairs, structure of the different regions of the root, sources of water, field capacity of the soil, and also with regard to the wilting point. These are the things we have discussed in the absorption of water. We will continue this class in the next week.